Hey everyone, welcome to Inverse Social Hour. My name is Jake. I'm the senior entertainment editor at Inverse.com. Today I'm joined by Jim Starlin. Hey Jim, how are you?
Doing fine, thank you.
So glad you could be here. Jim, if you don't know, is a legendary comics creator. He helped Marvel come up with a bunch of characters. He invented Thanos, Gamora, Shang-Chi he was the artist on. So I wanted to ask you about Dreadstar. It is a really interesting story. You know, the main character is the only survivor from our entire galaxy, right? And he shows
Yes.
up in this like foreign alien war between these two evil empires. And the idea of being like the only survivor from our galaxy feels maybe a little relevant today. I'm wondering if you feel like Dreadstar feels more relevant now than it did when you came up with it in the 80s.
What's going on these days has really surprised me on how much it seems like instead of starting this story before the COVID-19 and Black Lives Matters movement, it seems like this was planned afterwards, and it wasn't. So I'm feeling very Nostradamus in some ways at points. But the Dreadstar is an anarchist without a second act. He's always had a political bent to the stories. So as turmoil mounts, he becomes more relevant, and he stands out right now as something that a lot of folks could identify with.
Yeah, the idea of being sort of stuck in the middle between two evil empires that don't really care about you does feel. I guess that always feels a little relevant, but very much now, right?
Yeah, it's sort of like the teenage alienation that the X-Men have. You know?
Yeah. Why did you decide to bring back the character? I know you've got the personal story of her injury, which is fascinating in itself, but what was the motivation for this character in particular right now?
Like I said, I did blow a big hole in this hand here about 3 years back, and I figured at the time that it had pretty well ended my drawing career, and I was going to be writing from then on. But I was doing a lot of conventions this last year with the Infinity War and Endgame out, and so there was this one gal who kept bugging me for a Doctor Doom drawing. Well, she wasn't bugging me, but a friend of hers was bugging me, actually. And so I eventually, in the hotel room one night after one of these conventions, I sat down and gave it a try. And up until that point, every 15 minutes, if I'd been drawing, my hand started to cramp up because I lost a lot of muscle between the thumb and the finger. I was able to do this drawing okay. And then another convention, some charity thing asked me to do it. And I had been working on the coloring, remastering the coloring on the Dreadstar Omnibus before this. So I've been working with a stylus, which is not quite the same as working with a pencil. Yeah. But obviously, by going through the 500 pages, I was conditioning the hand to do this again without realizing that. I've been squeezing rubber balls all this time, too. But thanks to this person who had bugged me about the Dr. Doom drawing, I started trying to draw a little bit more each time, and eventually now I've got 100 pages out of the way, and so not only just to thank her, but because she's a pretty goddamn good inker, I brought Jamie on the project. She was the one who was bugging me about the Dr. Doom drawing. So it all worked out pretty nicely. She's out there in California, so it's been kind of a good collaboration.
What was it like to see your creation become just the most famous supervillain of all time, really?
It was a wild ride because I didn't have a relationship with Marvel editorial at that point when the first Avengers movie came out. And so I only heard about it like 2 days before over the internet. So I went to a midnight showing and was sitting there behind two rather animated fans. Obviously, one was a comic book fan, one was a cartoon fan. And when the end credits, they had talked throughout the movie, which was okay because it was that kind of a movie. But when the end credits came up and Thanos showed up, the comic book fan goes, "It's Thanos!" And the cartoon fan goes, "Who's Thanos?" And I figured it was going to be a wild ride after that. And so we went off to the set to do my little cameo for Endgame, which happened almost right in between the two movies when they were shooting it. Got to see a lot of stuff that never made it to the screen. Knew all the story. The screenwriters and Joe Russo's. Tony wasn't there because he had pneumonia at the time. I met him later on, but they were really open, which I didn't expect at all. And they told me just about everything. And for about a year and a half, I had to keep my mouth shut on everything. I kept seeing all these
a lot of people
articles in the internet where people were saying, "This is what's going to happen." I'm going, "No, it's not. I can't tell you that."
So wait, you mentioned stuff you saw that wasn't in the movie. Is there anything in particular?
Well, that's what I'm getting to. So about a month before Infinity War comes out, I get an email from Joe Russo's, and he says, "We had to cut a half hour of the movie, and all we did was we had to cut out all of Thanos' backstory, which they had a half hour of him on Titan and leading up to him destroying, getting the first gem.
Wow.
They had to cut all that stuff out. And all of it was shot too. And I thought they were going to do it in the CD or DVD version, but they didn't because it just cost too much money to put the special effects in.
Wow.
So a week or so before that, I'd been on a plane and I watched the Justice League movie. And was rather disappointed in it. And as soon as Joe told me they were going to get rid of all the backstory, I envisioned the Justice League movie, where Steppenwolf just sort of shows up at the end, and we're going, okay, who is this? Who cares? Some big guy for them to fight.
Yeah.
And my thought was, oh my God, this is going to be the same movie. If they cut out all his backstory, this is going to be the same movie, except it's going to be Thanos. And I started thinking about Bob Kane a lot. And Bob Kane had this Batman who was dark and mysterious. In the 1960s, they did this Batman show with Adam West, which was the antithesis of what Bob Kane had created. But Bob was getting a little piece of the action, so Bob had to say, "I love it." So as I'm sitting there in the line waiting to go into the premiere, I'm going, I got to practice. I love it. 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 And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be horrible. Before the Hulk even shows up, I realized I was wrong. I thought, literally 60 seconds in the movie, I'm going, no, this is not going to be a Justice League. And I was absolutely right. And so I was relaxed through the rest of the premiere.
I always like to ask my guests to make a toast. Who would you like to toast? Anyone or anything? Oh, what do we got here? Looks like moon.
Well, you told me they said there was going to be a toast involved, so I figured I'd bring along a little shot of tequila to have here and see if we can get this out here without spilling it all over myself. I'd like to toast all the giants whose shoulders I crawled up upon to get a career out of this crazy comic book business. To the greats like Jack Kirby and Joe Kubert and Steve Ditko. Thanks for starting it off and giving me a business I could work into, because I'm not good for anything else other than this.
Cheers to that.
Now we will behave ourselves throughout the rest of the thing and stick with seltzer water.
Let's pour one out. What's a show or a movie or a comic that got canceled and you think deserves another shot and should be brought back?
There was this British sort of crime adventure thriller thing called Utopia a few years back.
Yeah.
I thought it was one of the most interesting shows around. Its first episode has a number of people being horribly murdered inside a comic book shop.
Oh, wow.
So and unfortunately only lasted 2 seasons, and they canceled it right just as it was really getting interesting.
Maybe this is just another example of Jim Starlin, Nostradamus. They're bringing it back. Amazon.
Oh, you're kidding me.
Well, Amazon's rebooting it, new cast. They're redoing it for an American audience.
Okay, that's a shame, because that gal who was the lead in it, she was so spooky. I really liked her.
Was there a Dreadstar TV show, or did that get?
We were in pre-production.
Any chance you think it might get another shot now that Dreadstar is coming back in comic book form?
There's a chance. I'm talking to some folks, but there's nothing solid. And there's nothing solid until there's a contract signed and they're actually shooting.
Of course.
Now, I've learned that enough about this business that 90% of the things that start never go anywhere.
What do you think? Should it be live action or a cartoon? What makes more sense to you?
Live action, if they ever do live action again, is where the way I would go with it. But it wouldn't be adverse to a cartoon either. So that seems to be actually the easiest thing to do these days.
Yeah, a lot of cartoons are being made. Absolutely, such a far out story. I mean, I think it'd be amazing in live action, but also could work pretty well as a cartoon.
Yeah, it wouldn't work as a movie. It'd have to be a TV show. It's a really long story.
All right. So next question. It's karaoke night. What is a comic or even a show or movie that you wish you could have been the one to write?
Really good movies out there that I remember. The Wind and the Lion. I would have liked to have written that one. All the Usual Suspects. I think that's a terrific little story. Memento. I like a good story with my movie more than I do just a lot of action in that. And those are the ones that got some meat to it.
Absolutely. Are you a fan of Christopher Nolan? He made Memento. He's got some other great stuff too.
I do. I don't like his Batman movies all that much,
Really?
or his DC movies all that much, but his regular stuff I love.
Yeah, interesting. What's your Batman movie of preference?
I kind of go back to the old Tim Burton ones.
They're incredible.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bit of tongue in cheek and there's sort of some fun to it, which is what DC seemed to have lost in their movies, is having fun. And I enjoyed those ones tremendously, actually.
Yeah, I mean, those are great. Schumacher, obviously, also incredible. If misunderstood, maybe, but
I'm afraid I'm one of the ones who misunderstood it. I didn't care for that one too much.
no. Well, that's fair. You're not alone. Karaoke's over. Your drinking buddies are here. Who are a few people, alive or dead, who you'd love to share a drink with?
Oh, my friend Alan Weiss. Jamie's always fun to have a drink with after the end of the show. The late Marshall Rogers was fun to hang out with. Sean Connery, I think, would be fun.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Any of the actors who have played characters that I have created, they would definitely like to have a drink with. I had a glass of wine with Josh Brolin and the director Joe Russo's one time after one of the premieres. But I always thought that I really like to pick his brain and where he was going with that, because he really got on the money with Thanos.
No one expected Thanos to become the superstar he became, right?
No, especially me. Me more than anybody.
Yeah. I wanted to ask about Thanos. Thanos' future, I guess. Obviously Thanos died. Thanos died twice in Avengers Endgame, but there's still been a lot of chatter. How can Thanos come back? People want to see Thanos again. Do you think there's a way that Thanos can show up in a future Marvel movie, whether that's a flashback or like some other shenanigans?
Marvel's already announced that he's going to make a brief appearance in the Eternals.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, everybody keeps crediting me with blurting that out. I didn't do it. They made a boatload of money off him here in the movie, and they didn't retire Darth Vader entirely after he got lopped.
That's true.
So I imagine that you'll see more of Thanos along the way. I'd be very surprised if you didn't.
We had like a Thanos prequel series, like Star Wars, the whole Thanos' childhood, maybe.
Well, strangely, Kevin Feige doesn't confide in me in all this stuff, so I couldn't tell you.
I just want to ask about this shirt you're wearing, Thanos for President. It's great. You think he might be better than our current president?
Yeah, he only wants to kill half of us off.
Yeah,
basically the guy we got right now looks like he's going for the whole boat.
He really seems intent on killing all of us. It's great. It's the best.
I just find him amazing. I cannot think of one thing he's done in office that's helped anybody. Mm-hmm. Everything he's done has hurt. Yeah. And we cannot do another 4 years of him.
No way. Last call. What's a book or movie or show that you would recommend to me, to the audience, something you've enjoyed recently?
I mean, education-wise, right now I'm reading Great Fluenza about the 1918 epidemic. Books I'd recommend, Life of Pi would be one. Great little story. Made into a really beautiful movie, too, later on. What else would I recommend off the top of my head? Going back to the classics, A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. That's the one I revisit every so often. Creatures of Light and Darkness and Lord of Light by Roger Zelazny in the science fiction section. That's 3. That's a good enough start.
Yeah, I've never heard of this guy, the sci-fi author. He sounds really interesting, though.
Well, Zelazny was very popular in the 70s. Science fiction writers, they tend to disappear as time goes on, like
Yeah.
Arthur Clarke, who did 2001. Very few people know who he is at this point. A lot to do with the fact that technology advances to a point where they sort of lose their relevance. But this last thing was kind of interesting because his characters were sort of beyond science. They were sort of demigods in many ways in some of his stories.
Customary to leave a tip for the audience. What is some advice you could give anyone watching this who maybe would like to make their own comics of their own, make the next Thanos?
Learn all the rules and master the rules and then break them. That's the best bet. You want to be creative, especially if you're starting off working at one of the big companies. They are places that want to grind you down to the mediocrity level, and they don't mean to. It's just the way the thing is set up. You have to sneak in really good stories to get there. I came in a really good time, the 70s, where Roy Thomas was the editor at Marvel, and had too much work to keep a close eye on everybody. And so I was able to sneak in and have some fun with Warlock and Captain Marvel before they put the clamps down and made it real hard.
That's good advice. All right, so we've left a tip, but someone else picked up the tab for you. Who in your life has done a huge favor for you?
Steve Ditko. When I was 16 years old, I came to New York, and I was called around a number of people who I wanted to meet, and Steve was the only one who opened his door and let me come up to his studio, and spent a couple hours with me talking comics, drawing. It was a life changer.
You were 16.
So I will always be in debt to Steve.
At 16, that's incredible.
Yeah, I was here for the World's Fair.
Wow.
Flushing. Yeah, that's showing how old I am. Ancient.
Finally, closing time at Social Hour. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. So I want to ask, what's next after Dreadstar? Have you thought about any projects you want to work on after this one?
I'm going to do another Dreadstar graphic novel after this one.
All right, keep it
in many ways, this Dreadstar Returns is a setup for what is to come down the line.
Interesting.
So Jamie and I are going to be doing some Dreadstars for a while here.
Nice. I like it. When does Dreadstar Returns come out? How can people get their hands on it? What's the best way to check it out?
The best way is to go to the Amadeus website. There will be orders at that point. I don't think it'll be out until the end of the year. We're going to be a little bit hesitant about setting the date because of it's going to be printed over in China, like all the books these days, and shipped back here.
If you like this video, please check out more from Inverse. We're on YouTube, youtube.com/Inverse. Please subscribe. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks, Jim. Hope you have a great day. Bye.